Jesus meets the women of Jerusalem. With them, he meets his mother. The women who lined his way were much distressed. He turned his face to them and said, "Do not weep for me, weep for yourselves and for your children." His mother looks on. He struggles under the weight of the cross, and the thorns dig deeper into his head. What can describe her grief and sorrow as she looks on her son in his suffering? We adore you, O Christ, and we bless you, because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world. Jesus continues on his lonely journey up the hill. The weight of the cross presses down, pitiless as torture. There is noise, shouting, screaming, wailing, crying. Some deride him as an idiot, a fool, a terrorist, deserving of his agony. As he falls for the second time, he looks into the crowd to see who weeps so loud. Through bloodshot sight, he sees a group of women he recognizes. They are the ones he has met before, women who felt his kindness. As he looks toward them, they move forward, just far enough to reach out, but the soldiers stop them. They can see his face, and he can see theirs. He can see their sorrow, their rage, their helplessness. They can see his face, a face that once smiled at them, and hands that had once embraced them, now torn by thorns, crushed and bloodied and broken. And he can see faces too, the face of his friend at the well, Mary and Martha holding each other up. He saw she who had bled so badly, once outcast, now restored, unable to weep, but with rage on her face that would kill his persecutors. And nearest to him was one who owed him her life, she who had been exposed as part of a man's lust and selfishness, another man's dishonesty, another man's callousness and disregard of her or her life. But one man had not been careless, had not disregarded her. This man, bloodied and broken before her, had challenged them, the men who would lie and twist truth to save their reputations. Who of them who had no sin could cast the first stone at her? She owed him her life. She who had spent her life locked in the grip of abusive men. Now, none of them could cast a stone. All of them walked away. Earlier in the crowd who shouted, "Crucify him," she saw the angry faces of every man who walked away that day. Every man that ever came to her tent at night condemned him to this agony. She owed him the greatest of debts, and yet it was he who asked them all not to weep for him, but for themselves, and for all those yet to come who would endure yet more cruelty and abuse. He struggles on as he drags his way under the weight of wood and blood, beyond the crowd, through dirt and tears. He sees his mother. As their eyes meet, sorrow meets sorrow. The two can only look at each other. She rushes toward her son. The soldiers try to stop her, but a voice in the crowd cries out, "Let her go, she is his mother." She falls to her knees. At his level, she looks into his eyes. She holds his face and tries to brush away the blood and the tears. She can barely see him through her own tears, and her heart is sliced through. An old voice repeats again, and a sword will pierce your heart also. She wants to hold him in her arms, to lift him up, to take away the pain, to make it better. She cannot. Their bodies part, but their eyes do not. He continues his journey. Jesus met so many women when other men of his time ostracized them. He met women who were abused by men, women who had no power, women who were excluded for the natural physicality of their womanhood, unclean for being as God made them. Women whose own children had likely died of hunger or plague or murder. Women who were raped and killed by Roman soldiers or by their own menfolk, their own people. In this, our time of plague and pestilence, the incidence of domestic violence has risen by 25% as people are shut away in their homes. Once they could escape, ease the pressure, lower the heat, visit a friend, take the kids to the park. Now, women are alone with those who have a history of abuse and with little protection and no refuge. In this time, there are mothers who can only watch through windows as their children die on ventilators. There are mothers who are dying alone and afraid in isolation wards. The sheer sorrow when a mother's child dies. It is a truth. Mothers would rather bear the pain themselves than see their children suffer. Jesus was and is God. And God continues to bear their pain. God continues on God's painful journey with the sins and sorrows of half of humanity on his shoulders and the other half on his back. Womankind and mankind lovingly carried through the pain of being human. And God continues to rage with kindness in the midst of cruelty and prejudice, tragedy and sorrow. And God will never stop the long and difficult and arduous, painful, cruel journey until equality for all of humanity, for womankind and mankind, is achieved. We adore you, O Christ, and we bless you, because you carry your cross through prejudice, cruelty and sorrow, and you help us on our slow and arduous journeys through pain and fear toward justice and equality for all of your children, for all of humanity. Your painful cross carrying, redeeming all of the world.